Good morning. How you guys doing? Uh, it's nice to be here. It's particularly nice that this part is in Chilmark because I live nearby. I went to Edgartown yesterday for a panel, and it's probably the first time I've been in Edgartown in years, because I don't own a pair of salmon-colored slacks, so or a belt with whales on it. So they don't usually let me in over there. Um, yeah, thank you for the introduction, Tyson. And it's funny, Go the Fuck to Sleep came out 2 years ago, but continues to kind of be a dominant force in my life. And a lot of sort of wacky things happened in the aftermath, the run up to, and then the aftermath of that book. The censorship efforts in New Zealand were only one of those. That was one of my favorites though, because as he mentioned, the Family First New Zealand, which was a kind of Christian I don't know, censorship group of some kind. And New Zealand, right? Why New Zealand, right? New Zealand, really? Of all the countries in the world, New Zealand. And yeah, I actually have the press release that they put out framed in my office because I thought it was remarkable. And they said that while the book may be harmless and even amusing for normal, well-adjusted parents, it could pose a grave danger in the hands of aggressive, dysfunctional folks. And it's like, that's your rubric for censorship? Like, spoons are also dangerous in the hands of aggressive, dysfunctional people, A wide variety of things could be banned. But even greater was the defense of the book by the woman who read the audiobook in New Zealand and Australia, who goes by the name of Noni Hazelhurst. Is anybody here from down under? No? It's shocking, I know. Noni Hazelhurst is a venerated 60-something-year-old children's television presenter who also has a sterling film career. So she's like Maria from Sesame Street crossed with Meryl Streep, basically. And Family First said this, and she ended up going on national TV and debating the president of Family First New Zealand, who I got the sense was also the vice president, the secretary, the majority of the membership. And she just dressed him down and was basically, and it was amazing. She was like, this book is cathartic for people, and who are you, do you even have children? And he very shaken, and it just went away, And that mirrored a lot of the debate around the book that happened here. We were lucky enough with that book to kind of enter the zeitgeist and the conversation about culture and parenting and profanity and all these kinds of things. But the secret weapon that we had was the grandmothers of America. Whenever anybody mounted an offensive against the book, whenever anybody said it was inappropriate or vulgar or shouldn't exist, it was the grandmothers who piped up on the chat room message boards and the comment sections of various online publications, and basically, and the grandmothers of America turned out to be like a very crass and hip group of people, and consistently shut down any objections by basically saying things like, I have 17 grandchildren, you need to shut the fuck up, And it was amazing. They held, like, grandmothers held the ultimate sort of moral high card in this entire debate, and it was wonderful. It should always be that way, really. And a number of wacky things happened. I was recently reminiscing about something that happened almost exactly 2 years ago, which was that I was asked to be kind of a I don't know, celebrity guest host of a fundraiser for Boston Children's Hospital in Los Angeles, presumably because people in Los Angeles have money. So, one thing that happened in the aftermath of Go the Fuck to Sleep is I was sort of often mistaken as some kind of parenting expert, which sounds strange, I know. And so the hosts of this fundraiser were me and Dr. Richard Ferber, who may be a familiar name to any of you who've ever seen a child in your life. Dr. Ferber is the author of the Ferber Method, which is a sleep training style. And he's a divisive figure, you might say. He's a hero to some and a monster to others. He's like the cry it out guy, right? There's attachment parenting over here, which is what I practice, which means my daughter is still sleeping in my bed 5 years later. And then Ferber's thing is like you put the kid down, the kid cries, you ignore it, stifle those maternal, paternal impulses, and your kid will sleep through the night, and you can go ahead and lead your life. So one of the people to whom he's more of a monster is my partner, Victoria. I thought that being in the same room with him might be a problem. She might like throw a drink at him, or or like scratch his Rolls Royce or something, you know. So we got to the fundraiser, which was at a hotel in Los Angeles, famous mostly for the fact that John Wayne used to keep a cow on a balcony there because he lived there and he wanted fresh milk for his coffee every morning. And my role at the fundraiser was just to kind of drink drinks and shake hands, and I'm a titan at both those things. Ferber, though, was giving an entire presentation with a slideshow, and he had contacted my publisher to ask for slides from the book to put on the screen, which seemed like a good sign. And he had also been on NPR earlier that week saying that he was a fan of the book. So I felt like this was off to a decent start. We get there, and I meet Dr. Ferber, and he's like a very pleasant, avuncular Jewish man. Could have been my own uncle. Shorter, though. And, we chatted a little bit, and I proceeded to start drinking drinks and shaking hands. And after a while, the slideshow starts. And first of all, nobody there wants to hear a slideshow, watch a slideshow, right? Particularly not one featuring graphs and charts about how to put a baby to sleep, because nobody there had ever put a baby to sleep. Like, they have nannies for that. They have staff. They have entire wings of their houses that are, devoted to childcare, not hearing it. So he gives this rather long presentation. And the slide from the book that he's using is a picture of me, or an illustration based on a picture of me, sneaking out of the child's room while the child is perhaps asleep. And he puts it up on the screen and he says, "You should never do this. This is all wrong." I'm like, did you really just throw me under the sleep training bus, Dr. Ferber? That's what's happening here? And the night kind of concluded in a drunken haze. And I woke up the next morning, and I had an email in my inbox from Dr. Ferber. And the title of the email, the subject heading was, "Why didn't you tell me that I know you?" I was like, maybe Dr. Ferber had more to drink than I did. And I opened the email, and the story at this point becomes strange. So when I was 13, I had just been kicked out of a summer camp in New Hampshire, which is an unrelated story, which I'll not get into right now. But I excelled at getting kicked out of things as a youth. Summer camps, Sunday school, all kinds of things. It's a specialty of mine, you might say. And one of my friends from this summer camp was a kid named Thad Ferber. And he lived in Wellesley, and I lived in Newton, which was a gulf that you could not bridge very easily back then without a car. So, it's one of those kids from summer camp that you maybe hang out with once during the year, for reasons of logistics. And the one time I hung out with Thad Ferber in 1990 when we were both 13, we went to Tower Records, the top of Newberry Street in the Back Bay, right, when it existed. And I was a rap kid. I was a hip hopper. I was an MC and a DJ and a graffiti writer, as I deal with in this book, which I may or may not talk about later. It's early. I figure it's better to try to be funny. So we went to Tower Records, and I was there, to buy hip-hop records. And guarding the entrance to the room where these records were housed was a life-sized cardboard cutout of MC Hammer. You guys remember MC Hammer, right? MC Hammer was a controversial, divisive figure in 1990. He was at the top of the pop charts, but those of us invested in the authenticity and the political agency of hip-hop were not really fans. Hammer was kind of a clown. So naturally, I tore the head off of the cardboard cutout and put it in my jacket and attempted to exit Tower Records with this contraband stuffed in my inner pocket. Not really as an act of theft as much as decapitation. And I was apprehended in classic fashion, trying to go through the revolving door, and the security stopped, and I was trapped behind the glass, and they took me and Thad Ferber, who was guilty only by association, down into the basement. So Tower Records was about 4 floors up and about 4 floors down, similar to the structure of Dante's Hell. And in the bottom was a sort of makeshift dungeon area, and I was seated there, and I was sort of browbeat by these security guards I remember this so clearly. First, I remember being told that the cardboard cutout was worth $5,000, which seems exorbitant even for a cardboard cutout of MC Hammer, right? And I was either going to be released into the custody of my parents or the police. And I was, they demanded a phone number from me to contact my parents. Now, this was not my first rodeo, I got in trouble frequently, so I had a phone number memorized for occasions like this, which I knew to just ring and ring and ring. So I gave them this phone number, and it rang and rang and rang. Thad Ferber had never been to the rodeo, so he gave them his actual phone number. And in short order, Dr. Richard Ferber showed up and gave me a ride home. And he reminded me of this in the email. Presumably he had spoken to his son, the unforgettably named Thad Ferber, that very evening. And this email blew my mind. And also made me feel much better about it all, because clearly the great Dr. Ferber is not such a great parent after all, in that he let his son hang out with me. So things like that kept happening in the course of the book, the life of the book. At the time the book came out, I was teaching creative writing to graduate students at Rutgers University, and also teaching undergraduates there as well. And it's this time of year, early August, when most of the world that's lucky enough to be on vacation is enjoying the sun and the fun. But anybody who is associated with a university is already beginning to think about the forthcoming semester and prepare, whether you're a student or a professor. You'll notice that many of the service positions filled by college students on this island will be vacant in about a week and a half. Shockingly, I know. Don't worry, the summer is only half over. I'm not trying to scare you all. But so normally at this time, I'm now retired from teaching, but I would be writing syllabi right now. And writing a syllabus is kind of a fraught activity, because there's a lot that goes unspoken and unsaid. You're trying to set up your class, but you're also very cognizant of the limitations and the fights to come. So a few months ago, I decided that now that I'm no longer in the classroom, it was time to write a truly honest syllabus. So this is the syllabus. I apologize for reading off my phone, but I don't have a printer here on the island, and I have no choice. So this is the syllabus for my class, English 401, the short novel, meeting Tuesdays and Thursdays from 1:10 to 2:50 p.m. How many people are associated in some fashion with the profession of teaching or being a student? All right, maybe this will be helpful for some of you. Course description. In this class, we will analyze some of world literature's greatest short novels in an attempt to interrogate the essence of plot and character while reading as few words as possible. Each class session will begin with a student presentation of 15 to 20 minutes, so we're looking at an effective class time of about an hour. I'd love to give you a 5-minute break halfway through the period with the tacit understanding that we actually blow 15. But then I'd have to pretend I didn't notice when 36% of you didn't bother to come back. Or I'd have to pass the attendance sheet around again, which is a major pain in the ass. After the student presentation, which should cover structure and theme but will seldom rise above rote plot summary, I will provide whatever historical and biographical context is both critical to our understanding of the book and available on Wikipedia. But I will sound so authoritative and well-versed that you'd never know this, even if you had the book's Wikipedia page open on the laptop you're pretending to take notes on rather than your Facebook newsfeed. The rest of the period will be spent in class discussion, which by week 3 will have settled into an inside the actor's studio-esque conversation between me and 1 or 2 consistently prepared students who the rest of you will quietly despise. Occasionally, another student may come out of nowhere, Jeremy Lin style, and dominate a particular class, only to break my heart by fading permanently back into the woodwork the following week, Jeremy Lin style. Books. Course books are available at the campus bookstore. Please refrain from contacting me 8 weeks from now to say that the book we're discussing tomorrow is sold out and thus you are unable to do the reading. What if you went to the store to buy toilet paper and they were out of it? Correct. You'd go to another store. Even better, You'd anticipate your need for toilet paper and purchase it before the moment of desperation. I am not comparing the great short novels of world literature to toilet paper. Contact information. No, you may not have my email address because I'm sick of the way you sidle up to me at the beginning of class and ask if I got the hysterically punctuated excuse you fired off at 5 in the morning or 7 nanoseconds before class started. I'm also fed up with receiving emails from your mom and your older sister explaining how rough this semester has been for you, what with the suspended license and the new gluten allergy, and telling me why I should cut you some slack. To say nothing of the sadness that blooms in my soul like a dark flower when I receive emails from students at addresses such as kindbuds420@gmail and sexylexi69@me.com. This semester, we're going to try something a little different. Here is my home phone number. I live at my home with my wife and kids, and for all you know, one or more disabled elderly persons. 222-1745. If what you have to tell me about the unfairness of my grading policy is important enough to call, dial away. I didn't think so. Grading policy. My grading policy is to remain above the fray. Your assignments will be read by Scott, the teaching assistant. If you question me about your marks, I will plead ignorance. If pressed, I will strongly imply that Scott holds some kind of mystical or legal sway over me and that I am powerless to affect his decisions. Scott and I have worked all this out ahead of time. He is the bad cop and I am the kindly, aloof genius. Let me be clear. It would take a major act of God, not the kind of thing they consecrate saints for these days, but a plague of cigar-chomping labradoodles plummeting from the heavens for me to read a single word you have written. Exams. There will be a midterm and a final. Both will be Scantron exams. I feel awful about this because evaluating your understanding of literature via multiple choice goes against everything I believe in. But there are a lot of you, and your handwriting tends to be illegible, and even Scott has his limits. I will, of course, write a couple of quirky extra credit questions on the board halfway through the test. Who would win in a bar fight, Clarice Lispector or Thomas Bernhard? Show your work. Acting as though I have just made them up. Your final exam will not be given during finals week, but rather during the reading week preceding it. I will claim this is to beneficially stagger your schedule, but even you will see through that one. Academic honesty. Please note that Scott is excellent at ferreting out plagiarism, particularly the incompetent undergraduate variety in which the writing style veers from late caveman to deconstructivist within a single paragraph. Plagiarism is an expellable offense, and I am obligated to report all incidents to the dean. Realistically, I doubt they'd expel you if your tuition check cleared, and there's no way I'm reporting anything to the dean. I don't actually know who the dean is, and the last thing I want to do is draw his attention. What I will be looking for is remorse, as expressed through tears or a certain ashen, petrified quality. I will then give you a 0 on your paper, accept your gratitude stoically, and avoid making eye contact with you for the remainder of the semester. Office hours are by appointment only. Thanks. How long am I supposed to be up here anyway? Oh, really? Oh, that's a lot of time. Yeah. Okay. Maybe I'll read one more short thing and then we can chat. Would that be cool? Yeah? Okay. So, publishing is going down the toilet right now, as you may be aware. It's a rough time for writers. And when industry giants are merging, as Random House and Penguin recently did, it's not a good sign, right? Like if Coke and Pepsi suddenly formed, like, you know, Pepco or whatever, like it would be bad news for the soda industry. Compounding that is the fact that they chose the silliest possible name, right? They could have been Penguin House. That would have been great. They could have been Random Penguin. That would have been even better. I did 3 novels with Random House, then left to go to Viking, which is part of Penguin, and then they merged like 6 weeks later. To keep pulling me back in. So I started thinking about what the fruits of this historic merger would look like. So, you know, here's the fall 2013 list of titles forthcoming from Penguin Random House. It's in the form of a memo to Penguin Random editorial staff. Welcome aboard, new opportunities. We hope you're as thrilled as we are about the marriage of two of the world's greatest publishing houses, and we'd like to thank you for your patience and enthusiasm over the past few weeks as this historic partnership solidified. And now, without further ado, the first fruits of our merger, the title slated for spring 2013 release. What happens when you merge a proven winner with a proven winner? There's only one word: magic. Tuesdays with Moby Dick. A young man reunites with his dying mentor, an elusive white whale, in this inspiring tale of life lessons, heartfelt wisdom, and murderous obsession on the high seas. Cloud Atlas Shrugged. A mind-bending narrative that sweeps wildly across time and space as disparate souls connect, intertwine, and ultimately realize a universal truth. We must serve only our own self-interests, even if it turns us into a society of charity-hating, free-market assholes. A Dance with Dragons, Mice, and Men. The future of the Seven Kingdoms hangs in the balance as Daenerys Targaryen faces down a pair of new enemies from the west. A small, clever man named George and his lumbering, dim-witted companion Lenny. Is the man-child's pet mouse a match for the queen's three dragons? Only time will tell. The Joy Luck Road. A lush, beautiful saga of mothers and daughters, food and secrets, as a group of Chinese immigrants navigates a blighted, post-apocalyptic wasteland full of marauding cannibal armies. The Signal and the White Noise. An examination of the world of prediction, probability, and uncertainty as an adult professor tries to confront his existential angst amidst the endless cacophony of partisan polling and consumerist drivel. When an airborne toxic event turns his nightmares real, what are the chances he and his family will survive? The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn and Augie March. Two lovable scamps, one a 13-year-old prankster from Antebellum, Missouri, the other a poor Jew from 1920 Chicago, embark on a series of devil-may-care exploits. From river rafts to lifeboats, dog training to cross-dressing, they've always got one thing: each other. The Slaughterhouse Five People You Meet in Heaven. A wounded war veteran dies on his 83rd birthday and awakens in the hereafter, where he meets fellow vet Billy Pilgrim and embarks on a fantastical journey to the planet Tralfalmador, falls in love with porn star Montana Wildhack, and punches novelist Kilgore Trout in the face. Eat, Pray, Green Eggs, Ham. This heartfelt memoir follows a young woman determined to discover what she truly wants out of life. Will she lose herself in pleasure, in devotion, or will she realize that her true path leads home to the plain-spoken truths offered by a pushy, cholesterol-craved ruffian she's always loved? Tales of a fourth-grade goon squad. An angry musician and a distressed young woman in his employ lie at the center of a complex web of characters with one thing in common. All their lives have been destroyed by Fudge and his vicious, vindictive crew of grade school thugs. By turns lyrical and ultra-violent, uplifting and horrifying. 50 Shades of Grey. Let's pretend this never happened. The long-awaited new installment in the series America Pretended Not to Read cuts right to the heart of the matter as Anastasia Steele and Christian Grey realize they are embarrassed to know each other, agree that nothing between them seems real, and abruptly part ways. And finally, Who Moved My Cheese as I Lay Dying? Finally, sensible talk about changing times and managing the future from a self-help guru at death's door. This high modernist jigsaw puzzle combines practical tools for workplace progress with indecipherable stream of consciousness monologues from over a dozen unidentified characters. Thanks. I haven't said anything about Rage is Back, but it's my new novel. You should buy it. Any questions? Yeah, sure. I'm gonna. No, really, nobody, no. Thank you, sir, for saving me from talking about my novel.
I haven't read your book yet, so I really can't ask about it. But I would like to know where you went to public school in Newton.
There's only two answers, right? I went to Newton South High School. Before that, Brown Middle School. Before
Yeah.
that, Angel School in
I
Woburn,
thought so.
Massachusetts.
Yeah, I was your school principal.
Which school?
Well, it just became Brown when I left.
Ah.
And it was Meadowbrook before that. And I'm sure if I were your principal at the time that you were there, and then
I would have been in your office a lot.
you would have
So
been
yeah,
in the office a lot.
yeah.
Also, I would.
No, I still exchange Christmas cards with my high school and junior high school principal
Yeah.
because we spent a lot of time together. Yeah.
Also, I would be very proud of you as I am today.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. If you're in touch with Van Seashoals, maybe you could tell him that you said that because he would, he might like to know that. So Rage is Back is it's your typical magic realist graffiti revenge story. It's about an 18-year-old kid named Dondi Vance, who's the son of two famous graffiti writers from New York City's golden era of train bombing. From 1973 to 1989, incredible works of art were painted illicitly and illegally on the outsides of trains. During this time, the city spent upwards of $300 million trying to prevent this art crime from happening. It was a pitched war between the city and essentially its teenagers. The city launched a series of wars on graffiti, which were really kind of wars on young people of color for the most part. A lot of the language and the policies which have opened the door for things like zero tolerance, quality of life offenses, the epic incarceration of young people and people of color in this country were really started in that era through the war on graffiti, first prosecuted by Mayor Lindsay and then by a series of like-minded mayors afterward. My book deals with an epic comeback from the writers of this era in 2005 who gathered to attempt to paint every train in the New York City subway system in one weekend in order to bring down a former Vandal Squad cop who's now running for mayor. So the book revolves around a kid named Dondi and his estranged father, Billy Rage, who's been missing for 15 years since fleeing the country to avoid prosecution in civil and criminal court. There also may be some demons living in the tunnels that are involved in the caper. I mean, you asked, so, that's what the book's about, yeah.
Thinking about that, I've often had the feeling when I'm sitting in the subway, and mostly that's in Cambridge or Boston these days, although sometimes in New York, that there are two kinds of graffiti. There's the unauthorized graffiti, some of which is quite appalling, and it's great to not have that.
Mhm.
But then there's the authorized graffiti, which is paid for by big corporations who can afford to bespatter
Right.
the public subway system with advertising.
Yes,
And in
that's correct.
Boston, it's more and more pervasive. The elevator shafts that stick up in Harvard Square that
Mhm.
belong to the MBTA,
Mm-hmm.
covered with advertising.
Yeah.
The floor that you walk on in the Harvard Square station,
Right.
advertising banners for the Wall Street Journal
Yeah.
hanging in the Harvard Square station.
Yeah.
Could you talk about this?
Yeah. It's an excellent point. It's fascinating because the conversation, the public conversation about graffiti always has broken down into these rather unsophisticated binaries where there are overzealous attacks and equally impassioned defenses. And the only people who seem to find middle ground and be able to embrace the paradox of art and vandalism, fame and anonymity are the writers themselves, who don't wish to eliminate the vandalism aspect. That is a part of what they do, and it's very deliberate and very well thought out. Graffiti writers tend to be historians of their craft and of their cities. And their tactics really open the door for this kind of advertising. And what's amazing is that in the conversation and the criminalization of graffiti, and there are people serving up to 20 years in this country for graffiti crimes in states like Texas and even California, there's no discussion really of the visual pollution that is corporate advertising, which is incredibly pervasive. This was a point I wanted to make to the MTA when this book was published. So I had my assistant, and as you say, now you can, for $50,000, you can buy a subway ad on the outside of the train, right where these kind of colorful illicit burners once ran. But what you can't do is have it look anything like graffiti. You can have a vodka ad with a naked woman in a dog collar. That passes muster according to CBS Outdoor, which handles the advertising and decides what's acceptable and what isn't. But anything that is aesthetically similar to graffiti is impermissible, which is problematic because the MTA and the City of New York's definition of graffiti, pursuant to their zero tolerance policy, is defacement of property, public or private. So if you're defining graffiti as illegal, but you're criminalizing the aesthetic of an advertisement, you're on real shaky intellectual ground, right? Like, you know, illegal. You know, it's kind of like, I don't know. I don't even know what to say. It's a real quandary. It's like, yeah, it's really shaky. Hypocritical is good. I had a more poetic turn of phrase that's escaping me right now. But 5 minutes. So it's a problem. So I got them to reject my ad based on what it looked like, and then I wrote an editorial about it, and in a calculated act of provocation. But anybody with 50 grand can buy an ad on the train in New York City for a month. And adding to the irony in my mind is the fact that the city likely never would have thought of this as an advertising space if it hadn't been broken by graffiti writers, you know? There was a very pivotal moment in this war on graffiti in about 1983 where a group of young writers, teenagers, right? Let's be clear, we're talking about the vandals who were terrorizing the city and causing $300 million to be spent against them were 13, 14, 15-year-old kids. So 4 of them went to meet with a guy named Richard Ravitch, who was an MTA employee. And they offered him a grand bargain, right, intended to bring a truce to the proceedings. For a moment, let me pause to say it's remarkable that in the battle between the biggest municipality in the country and a bunch of teenagers, who has the maturity to come to the table with a truce? The teenagers. And they say to Ravitch, they say, look, we understand what's at stake here. Here's what we propose. Rather than spending all of this time and money prosecuting us and jailing us and beating us, give us one train line, just the outsides. We won't write on the insides of the trains. We know that's ugly and nobody really likes it, but let us have the outsides of the trains where we're doing incredible, beautiful work that's being admired and lauded by people like, you know, Richard Goldstein in the paper. For 6 months, give us one train line and let us paint it. And then after that, let's let the people of New York decide whether to continue or not. And this was a very sweet and naive and unworkable, but also brilliant solution. And the city never considered it for 1 second. Ravitch's response was, if you guys want to contribute and be part of the community, as you claim, I'll give you all mops and brooms and you can clean the stations. But there was a real opportunity in that moment. New York, instead of, you know, this elaborate war on graffiti, which opened the door for all these other tactics and policies, could have decided to launch the most innovative arts program in the country. It would have taken 6 scholarships, $10,000, and what would have followed would have been a wild transformation and a lot of feel-good stories about how inner-city kids from poverty, going to crappy, crumbling schools, had reinvigorated their community and bettered themselves and turned into artists all at the same time. Instead, the war raged on for another 7 years, and countless people's lives were ruined because of it. So there it is. Yeah, thanks. Thank you, guys.